Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to today's Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360 monthly webinar. So this is obviously for April 2023. So like always, today's session will be recorded, so everyone will receive a link to today's recording, or you can find all the previous recordings on our YouTube channel. You'll all receive a copy of the slides as well, and please answer any questions you do have, either myself or Aaron, into the Q&A panel, and we'd be more than happy to answer those questions at the end of the session. So today I'll give an update on what's changed with BGL's products. And then Aaron Dunn's joined us to give us an update on Smarter SMSF and what's happening with the $3 million super tax. So welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, there's a little bit of activity that's gone on since the last update. Obviously, we've seen a consultation, so I thought it was a good opportunity to not only talk about some of the stuff we've been doing together that I mentioned last month, but also a bit of an update as to where the government's thinking is with that consultation as well.
That'd be great. Okay, and then as I mentioned, any questions you do have, please enter in the Q&A panel, and Aaron and I will be happy to answer those at the end. We do have several BGL team members logged in as well, so they're happy to enter any responses as well. So please ask any questions you do have at any stage. Okay, so with BGL products, Simple Fund 360, Simple Invest 360, the last update we released was on the 30th of March, 2023, and our next update's actually going out this afternoon. So I'm going to show you some of the features that we released in our previous update and some of the things that will be released in today's update. So I touched on this in our last webinar for those that attended, but we released some functionality there with our BGL Smart Docs that also allows you to enter in transactions for rental statements. So the technology here allows you to extract the data out of the PDF. And those PDFs obviously can come from various sources, various different rental agents, formats, different types as well. So we've tried to obviously include as many different ones as we can. Extracts the data and tries to then post adjustments, especially around year-end disbursements or expenses. So this can be done at basically any date, month-end, quarter-end, year-end, and will automatically post an adjusting journal there at the appropriate period. So let's take a look at an example of this within Simple Fund 360. Okay, so jump within the fund, and so with the actual documents, they can be either emailed to the fund using the email address that we do provide. They can be uploaded using any of the various screens that we do have there as well. So if you go across to the document screen, okay, find that rental statement. Okay, you can click on that, and it will open up as you can see there. So on the left-hand side, you can see the actual rental statement that I've opened up. And there on the right-hand side, you can see the data that it's extracted from that. So what it'll do, it will grab the information, as you can see there, that it's grabbing the relevant, lines, items, and then it's transforming those into the relevant chart of accounts here for the particular investment. We do also cater for where the agent has provided a statement for multiple properties at the same time. So that was an update we've done over the last sort of month or so as well. And as you can see there on the right-hand side, what it's doing is showing what the ledger amount is. So what's the actual amount or balance that's within Simple Fund 360? What's the amount which is on the statement? And what's the actual adjustment which is going to post in terms of a journal transaction within the application? So you can see all those marry up. I go and I can just click on Post Adjustment Journal. Okay, so it's giving me confirmation. If I click on View Transaction, okay, you can see it's actually posted the transaction there automatically, post the actual sort of, the relevant adjustments to bring that into balance, and post that accordingly. So that particular transaction, that can be obviously removed at any stage. And if I go across back to the document screen, okay, and we'll go back to that rental statement again. So you can see here the difference, where on the right-hand side, the balances have already been posted and married, so it's not going to post an additional transaction as the balances that are within Simple Fund 360 now equal the statement balance provided by the agent. Okay, so next one there is consolidated reporting. So this is for BGL users where you have both Simple Fund 360 and Simple Invest 360. So as you can see there on the left-hand side, you can actually combine balances, amounts, and that for a family group or reporting group, with which you can combine investments, balances, taxation information for SMSFs, companies, trusts, and individuals. So you can find where you have both products, you can find this under the reports menu, consolidated reporting. Okay, so you can either create a new group and assign entities to that group. Or in this case, I'm going to select my existing group, which is the Bird family group. So as I mentioned, as you can see there on the left-hand side, it can contain SMSFs, trusts, companies, and individuals. In this case, I'm going to individuals. And what you can actually see is all the performance reporting, summary of information in terms of balances, asset allocation, taxation information, and obviously financials, which can be obviously combining all the different amounts together. And you do have the ability to generate this to PDF for a nice report to provide to clients as well. So with one issue that we're trying to resolve with this is where there's journals posted in, or a investment journal posted from one entity to the other, is to try and not double count those particular journals. But as I mentioned, if there's any other feedback you do have while utilizing this, please provide it back to the team. Okay, so going on to our key features that we're releasing into our update, which is going out later today. So first one there is around our current export we do have there with Lodge IT. So going across there to my entity, and I'll go across there to the tax compliance screen. Okay, so as you can see down the very bottom there, obviously, if you are utilizing Simple Fund 360 in terms of your lodgements, there's obviously nothing you're going to utilize as part of this. Where you are utilizing zero tax for your tax lodgements for your practice, and you want to lodge all your returns in the one application, we do have the ability here to push the SMSF return directly into zero tax via their API. And for those firms that are utilizing Lodge IT, we now support the ability to export the SMSF return to be imported directly into their application, so you don't have to rekey any data there within the system. Okay, so a reminder here that with SuperStream that BGL's arrangement with Australia Post is ending June 30. So your practice would have received obviously multiple emails on all the SuperStream screens. We've updated them to display relevant messages. And now what we're adding today is also a change ESA notification letter. So if I go back into, I'll go actually off the report screen. There's two places where you can find this. So if I go into a report screen, search for change, you'll find there the change ESA notification. Okay, and that will be obviously generating that relevant letter that can be provided to the trustees. Okay, and to allow them and providing the information that they have got there. Or if you are on the SuperStream dashboard, the same thing that for the particular investment, particular SMSF, you can generate it here from the top menu there as well. Okay, so for our shared data pack, so from today, we will be now supporting advanced share registry. So that's meaning we're supporting the top 4 registries in Australia. So they're being obviously Computershare, Boardroom, Link Market Services, and now Advanced Share Registry. So that'll go through and I'll support all. We've also provided a new screen in terms of our contract notes management. So that'll also allow you where there have been issues in terms of receiving notes, reading information there from the brokers, an easier way to manage and diagnose those. You can also get a confirmation of all the particular emails that have been received through. So again, just a reminder for those that are not utilizing our share data pack, what that allows you to do is confirm either end of each quarter, and especially useful there year end, that both the balances are held, what the balance is held with that particular registry, confirms doesn't match the balance within Simple Fund 360, and presents obviously a variance, as you can see on the screen there, for some relevant, the relevant, I suppose, shares or ETFs, etc. It supports multiple HINs or SRNs within that service. And as I mentioned, we will be, so it does support the top 4 registries. Our aim is to have the, I guess our end aim is to support all the registries. So we'll start working on the others there in the near future. Okay, depreciation. So there's several improvements we're releasing today. So there'll be a write-off button where you, that once the depreciation is posted and the written down value equals 0, you're prompted to then to dispose of the asset. So just making sure that it's not left there within the depreciation functions. The depreciation schedule has a new column now for capital works deductions, so that you can obviously view in terms of the schedule both the capital works deduction and depreciation together on one particular report. And we do have a warning message there where if it is a fund in pension phase, so there's at least one pension member, it'll give you a warning if the pension policy hasn't been added for the year, to get you to do that first, obviously before going through there to the depreciation screen. Again, like always, if there's any other improvements you'd like to see to the depreciation screen or functions, please go through and use the feedback button within Simple Fund 360 or Simple Invest 360, and our team would love to hear those. So some things that are coming soon. So with our Smart Docs technology, again, our end aim is to be able to support every single document that the SMSF does encounter. So our sort of ones that we have on the near roadmap are our insurance statements, the ability to read RBSs, and for obviously annual tax statements for managed funds and ETFs, etc. The ability to read those and automatically create the transaction, very similar to you saw with the rental statements, automatically create those there at year end as well. So we'll provide more information once they are available. Also coming soon in the next few months, there's a 2023 SMSF annual return. So the good news for that is there's no changes compared to last year. So it's really exactly the same. For Simple Invest, we'll obviously have the changes for the 2023 trust tax return and company tax return. Currently, we're beta testing practice management sync with APS practice management and also MYOB GreatSoft. So once those initial pilots have passed all tests on both sides, we'll allow that, I guess, more clients to come on board with that and roll that out to all clients who currently utilize APS and GreatSoft. Okay, so next we'll pass over to Aaron for his section, but I think what we'll do first, Aaron will launch a quick poll there for everyone.
Yep.
So I guess while everyone's, I suppose, submitting their answers, you know, the federal budget's coming up next month. Is there any sort of crystal ball, you know, guesses or things that you think that might affect the SMSF sector?
Well, it's interesting just seeing the polls there. So, well, we know first off that the government has already announced this $3 million threshold, and I'll touch on that a little bit more shortly. But the objective of super, in my view, throws a couple of little indicators out, in particular where we think about the tightening of preservation, and there are a number of other areas such as the residency and the 2-year amnesty that was going to be around defined benefit pensions. Some of those things have been spoken about for some period of time, and I guess again maybe we might get a little bit more of movement in the shed around that sort of thing. So yeah, so my gut feels we're not going to see anything more that is big like that $3 million threshold announcement, but I would suggest that there are a number of other smaller things that we will see that will make the Tuesday night much busier than it has been in the past few years.
Yeah. And so I suppose, as we can see there, that I suppose there's a high majority think that there'll be further tax changes there to SMSF. So, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Jeeves, are you going to control the mouse here for me? Yep. All right. So perfect. So what I thought we'd do, so two parts to today. And the first is to give you a bit of an update. Jeevan, you asked me last month to come on and I guess talk about what has been happening within the SMSF sector. And since that point in time, we've seen initially the government announced this $3 million threshold where an additional 15% tax would apply. We then saw a fact sheet that came out that spoke about it, and it really raised more questions than answers. But then what we have seen in the interim is a consultation paper. Now that consultation paper for submissions has now closed, and you may have seen in recent times a range of articles throughout financial services media around those submissions and many of the areas of concern. So a few things that I just wanted to, I guess, let you all up to date on. The consultation did have an inclusion of, I guess, a range of representatives from within the SMSF sector talking to Treasury about some of the concerns. So the mechanics, I guess, were the first thing that we started to get a better understanding of how these rules will work. And you can see in the diagram on the right-hand side, for the first time, we start to get an understanding of, well, when we need to look at the calculation to determine the amount of earnings that are attributable and the proportion that is above 3 million, there will be what I call a ceiling and a floor that will need to be applied, in essence, capping out at $3 million if our balance goes above 3 million for the first time, or our balance reduces down to $3 million for the first time. So these sorts of things now form part of the discussion going forward, and we get an understanding of how the government is looking to deal with that. The other thing that we did see was further information around the definition of earnings. So what the government has tried to do is keep this quite simple in the calculation, where we were looking at the closing balance of a member's total superannuation balance, adjusting for net contributions, adding back withdrawals, and then reducing off our opening balance. The problem with that is that it not only, putting aside for a second the unrealized earnings issue that is a very much a live issue here, but it was actually, the problem is there are so many things that are going to get included in that calculation. So net contributions, we're going to have to adjust for personal injury payments and TPD payments. And we're also going to have to adjust for not only the tax, but our Div 293 tax. We're going to have to look at things like credits coming back for reversionary pensions. In the event of death, what the government has indicated as part of the consultation, that there will not be a taxing point in the year of death for that individual. So in essence, the balance will die with them. So if they actually have a carry forward loss, the intention is that loss will die with them at that point in time. So what is relatively straightforward is, in a calculation, we'll have a whole heap of things hanging off it when we look at the definition of, like I said, what is a contribution, net contribution, what is a withdrawal, and so forth. So there is some real problems that we see in there, and greater clarity that will be required. Treasury then, as I mentioned before, did consult with the SMSF sector. So Tim Miller, who works for me, was actually involved in that consultation Monday week ago as part of the final round prior to submissions. And what the government did make clear is that there are some negotiables, but there are a range of not negotiables. So things like the $3 million threshold is not on the table to be bargained with. And the way in which they're trying to tackle this, they were fairly resolute in the fact that it needed to be sector neutral. The focus, however, from the SMSF industry, given that around 75% of those affected, potentially more, are self-managed super funds, is to create what we call an alternate model approach. Because self-managed super funds have much greater granular information to determine actual earnings rather than simply through a TSB movement, then that should be available for self-managed super funds to use. When that model is not available, then we go back to an alternate approach, which is like maybe what the government is proposing here, because there are certain APRA funds that can deal with it in a more granular approach, like a self-managed fund, and there are some that can't. So trying to create a level playing field here, and again, is not something that Treasury needs to enforce, because we have seen countless examples, even this year with the NALE consultation, so the non-arm's length expenditure, a different model for self-managed super funds versus APRA funds. So cut a long story short, consultation has closed. The government has taken on board that feedback. Treasury is working through that as we speak, and will be coming up with, after factoring in all the consultation feedback, how they will progress from budget and then into draft legislation, which is expected within the months thereafter the federal budget. So what will happen from there is once we get that draft legislation, there will then be a consultation process around the draft legislation, and we move on from there. So yeah, there's a lot of water to still go under the bridge. Quite clearly, the area of unrealized gains is front and center with that. So looking at these alternate models, accepting that the government is going to impose a higher tax, we therefore need to come out to something that we believe is fair and reasonable. So we put a blog post together on the consultation paper, so you'll be able to go away and have a look at that further if you want to find out more. And Smart SMSF will be running a budget webinar on the Thursday. I think it's the 11th of May. So you can jump onto our site and go to the events, and you'll be able to register to find out more. So Devin, we might then move across, because one of the key things that both of our teams have been working on in recent times has been around our pension commencement. So one of the things that we have had a limitation on with the pension documents for some period of time, we've been able to get the information from BGL when it comes to things like fund details, member details, and so forth, but the components and the details of the particular member themselves, we were limited. So what Jeevan's team has been able to do is put together some, I guess, API information for us to now enable us to fully populate the pension documentation for you. And we've made some fairly substantial enhancements to our original pension documentation, which I'm just going to take you through in these screens as opposed to live. You'll get a little bit of a chance later, I can do that, but I just wanted to focus on some of these key areas. So the first thing here is that you will be able to, once you've selected the pension, when you go into the order form now, you will be able to choose the year. And most importantly, where you have those pensions set up within Simple Fund 360, you will be able to select one or multiple pensions in that relevant year to now bring that data out. So you can see in here, in this first screenshot here, it allows you through a screen to choose the relevant financial year. And once the fund is selected, you select the pension, the pension year in which those pensions have commenced. Now, a key part to this is that you need to have your pension details set up within Simple Fund 360, because if you have no pensions set up for that relevant year, what you will see, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, is a notification that comes up that says there are no available pension accounts. It will then still populate the fund and member information, but naturally you're not going to get any pension data that is coming across. So from there, once you choose the relevant year, we now have a few other additional features for you to choose from. And Jeeves, if you can move across to the next slide, what you can now do is, if you have multiple pensions being started in a particular year, now it might be husband and wife, it might actually be that you're doing a recontribution strategy, so the one member has multiple pensions. It will enable you to choose any one or multiple income streams to be able to import that data. So from there, if you choose the one pension, then it's naturally going to take you into the form and you can go through and complete that order. If you choose multiple pensions, then each of those is going to be stored inside the saved orders area for you to then work through based upon the information that it has been imported from there. And again, that was something that we had a lot of feedback from our members to say, well, it's good that you can do this at one at a time, but if we're working on multiple members with multiple pensions throughout a particular financial year, it would be great to go through that process in one, I guess, import. So that is in essence what we have done there as well. So again, just if you do more than one, they then create the different saved orders for you to be able to work through. So then, Jeeves, if we can sort of kick along again there, a couple of other key features that we have now added in. So I'm not going to focus too much on the importing of the fund and the member data and that sort of stuff, but these are some key changes that we've made into the documentation. So for those of you that use our Smarter SMSF deed, on the basis that you choose yes, then we are automatically populating the rule, and it allows you to then keep moving in respect to the pension documentation. On the flip side, for those of you that don't use the Smarter SMSF deed, we do create what we call a more generic set of documents that enable you to more specifically tailor to than you might get from, say, Simple Fund itself. Now, what you can see in here, and another piece of feedback that we got from that is whether you want to or whether you have available the clauses in front of you with the SMSF deed. We use a number of providers and they might be doing that work externally for another firm, and they don't necessarily have information relevant to that fund to enable the payment of the pension. So we've built some, what I call some generic clauses, but if you do have the deed information and you know the powers to pay the pension, you can then do that as well. So you've got some different mechanisms there that you can use based upon which deed you have with your self-managed super funds. So if we now move to the next one, this is the big shift that we have done with our pension documents. And this came out of a real life case study of both BGL and Smarter SMSF clients, where we now have a multi-step pension process. So our existing pension documents, we have what we call a process where there was initial oral request, and then once you complete the financial statements, you can then confirm that original oral request, say at the 1st of July. We had a real life example where that client, between the time where they started the pension and when they passed away, they had done the oral request but hadn't confirmed. So what we now have, if you have clients that want to start pensions on 1 July, you can actually now go ahead and do that, because we have this two-step process that allows you to confirm the intention of the member to complete or to start the income stream, a range of conditions around that, naturally not including the account balance, forms part of that initial request. And then through our process of completing that initial first step, we then create a saved order for you to undertake step 2 once that balance becomes known. Okay, and how does it become known? You are naturally completing the financial statements, and therefore this is removing any reference and risk around backdating of documents. So you can see on the screen at the bottom here, what we are doing from the import from Simple Fund 360 is we are picking up the account name that you can see there, in addition to the commencement date and that information. Once you here know or don't know that account balance, it will then dictate some of the fields you can see there. So in this instance, where we have the account balance not being known, we are then linking it to the financial statements that are being completed. And then we are confirming there whether we're starting with the entire balance, which naturally we will know once the financial statements are completed, or with some other way. And as I said, you're not having to, in the second step, re-key information in. You have a saved order, and then you'll be able to import that information once you have the account balance known for the income stream to then go through and do that next step. So that diagram on the right-hand side really steps you through what you can do now in a multi-step process if you want to commence income streams that way. So the other bit that, again, I talked about with the enhanced API is now that we can not only link it to the initial request, but the API now enables us to populate all of this form information. So we are now getting not only our fund, our trustee, our member information, we're also getting our pension information. So the pension name, the commencement date, the reversionary status, and the components that make up that member's superannuation interest to enable us to determine the pension value. So you can see here, what we now have is the information populating automatically into the form that will enable you to then do all the other calculations that are required. So the Smarter SMSF form will do the proportion calculation, the minimum pension calculation, including the pro rata. Yes, that stuff is in Simple Fund 360 as well. But the form that we have does that calculation automatically. So if you really wanted to, you can do a bit of a cross-check on the two of those things. But that is a fairly significant shift now that enables us to populate that part of the form to be able to keep things moving along for you as well. And then the other bit here comes to some of this technical functionality that we've now added into the system here too. Because not only are we doing that calculation of minimum pensions and so forth, but we are giving you the opportunity to consider some other strategic things that your clients might need to be contemplating. So one of those things is, are you taking what level of pension? If you are choosing at least the minimum, we now allow you as part of that pension commencement to choose whether the pension is having an election to treat amounts from that to come out as a lump sum or as a commutation. So we know from our tax ruling 2013-5 that a commutation must be done prospectively for it to be a valid commutation, and therefore get us the debit that we may want from that strategy for a transfer balance cap perspective. So we've built this process into the order form and will allow you, based upon if you choose yes, to choose the way or priority in which you want to take that amount. So whether if you have an accumulation account, if you want to take it from the accumulation first and then from a commutation, potentially vice versa. And you can see there on the right-hand side, it's giving you that ability to choose the order of priority around those things as well. And if it's a commutation, again, you would reference the commutation rule. Otherwise, you could use some flexibility and a generic reference in the document template would apply. And the last one here, which we see is really important, is the frequency that pension payments will be made. So again, you've got, yes, annual, monthly, quarterly, weekly, all that sort of stuff. But we've also got at the trustee's discretion. And that is the most common approach to be used, because the reason for trustee discretion is that it ensures the flexibility on the pension payments. If you have a requirement that says the minimum needs to be $36,000 a year, and they determine they choose to take $5,000 a month, well, technically, you'd be in breach of the payment standards if you decide to adjust payments from that income stream where it has been agreed to between the trustee and the member. So by virtue of having the choice of the payments, so the flexibility around payment discretion, it resides with the trustee, then it allows you to pick and choose and marry off as you see fit around how the payments need to be made, and therefore avoid any potential compliance breaches with the pension standards, which are not only within the regs, but it's then the agreement between the trustee and the member as well. So again, there's more information within the actual calculation, and then the way in which you might want to incorporate elections and other things into that process. And the final bit here is just around the reversionary details. So again, we've got the information coming out of Simple Fund 360. Does a reversionary exist? Yes or no? Who that reversionary is, the relationship of that reversionary. And then the final thing, we give you the choice around whether you want to take it in percentage form, dollar amount or transfer balance cap. And this will become more and more relevant as time goes on with the $3 million threshold as well, because we may see clients looking to change that level of reversionary to accommodate the way in which they might want benefits to be paid out, because they don't necessarily want it to be 100% going across from member A to member B. So just a couple of other things to wrap up. So they are now available on the BGL site. We are keeping the existing pension documents on there until 30 June, whilst we go through a full migration process. We're getting a number of our existing members working and giving us some feedback around those pension documents too. The other thing that we have recently completed is our ABN TFN integration. So if you order a new self-managed super fund via our existing Smarter SMSF platform, the ABN TFN is now live and available to use on the Smarter SMSF site. So we have $55 for the pay-as-you-go process for our members. There is a $33 fee to be able to utilize that. The time savings are substantial through the testing process that we've got. The other thing to note here is we will be adding into this process the GST and PAYG registrations. And therefore, once we've kind of finished and the process around our existing Smarter SMSF app, we're then moving into making this live within Simple Fund 360. So the document platform that you can connect from directly within Simple Fund 360, you will then be able to do the same thing once you've ordered a new SMSF through the Simple Fund 360 document area there, where you can order docs. You'll then be able to apply for the ABN like you can do on our app at the moment. So our team are literally working on that as we speak. And you'll see on the action, so this is on our existing site, but in essence, it's one and the same. There is simply an action under there that says you can apply for the ABN TFN, and all the data that has come from that new SMSF form will go across to the new form for you to be able to complete, and then we submit that through to the ABR via the API. The other thing that we are currently working on is an integration with Macquarie as well, and that is going to give you the ability then to finish off, I guess, from a fund establishment point of view, the ability to not only set up your company, your fund, do your ABN, and you'll be able to get a bank account as well. And that is all coming through what we call our document workflow feature. So we're doing a fair bit of work on that at the moment. I'll touch on that sort of as we go through these updates in the future. But geez, I might just get you to the next page just to explain what this is in essence going to look like from a fund establishment point of view. So rather than us looking at combining forms together, it has obviously a load time on our side. It has the need to put multiple documents together and so forth. We're actually using workflows or document flows to enable us to move data from one thing to another to another. So the idea is you'll be able to complete a company incorporation, and you can do this now. You'll get your certificate of incorporation, you'll get your constitution and so forth. Once you've completed that order, you can do that through our document integration within Simple Fund 360. You can do it on our own platform. The action then can be you can send that data straight through to CAS 360. Now, if you incorporate your companies through CAS 360, you can also order Smarter SMSF constitutions through CAS 360 as well. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way you come from, whether you do it within CAS and then incorporate, or whether you do it via us and then push it back to CAS, you've got the ability to, I guess, seamlessly work between the two. What we then are doing is we're pulling that information from our company, name of corporate trustee, directors, and so forth, and putting that into our new SMSF form. We will then finish off the SMSF form that we need, and the action there will be that we can then, once that document has been generated, we can send the data, and we can also send the documents into Simple Fund 360 for you as well. And then the final part of this process is we'll then be able to, using the data of our new SMSF, we'll be able to then do our ABN TFN. And again, once the ABN has been issued, we're going to be sending that information, or allowing you to, as an action, send that ABN back into Simple Fund 360. You're not going to get your TFN. And you notice the regulation, they are naturally going to come through within about 14 days once that has been done. Again, the application for the Macquarie CMA, based upon the data that we have, we'll be able to do that. And we are hoping to have that done by 30 June. And then again, for investment strategies, we'll be able to, again, pull that data through to enable you to populate that. So we see this document flow as really being a key way in which, not only, I guess, from a fund establishment point of view, but using this doc flow to enable a series of actions to occur. So we could see a company incorporation with a bare trust. We can see a change of trustee with a deed upgrade. We can see a commutation of a pension with a pension commencement. This document workflow is going to enable us to utilize a range of strategies, but utilize a range of workflows that can help you in your business. And hopefully in the not too distant future, you'd be able to task those, in particular those with subscriptions, between different people within your organization as well. So from whether it needs to be reviewed and signed off, or once they've been completed, that they need to be viewed by managers and so forth too. So yeah, so Jeeves, that's a bit of an update about what we've been working on within Smarter SMSF. So if you haven't worked out how to get started, you can order documents with us, pay as you go. You can order also via document packages. But geez, I might just get you to show people within Simple Fund 360 how they get started again. It's probably worthwhile. So on the Connect on the left-hand side, you can see there, and then there is an Order Documents button. All you need to do is click on that, and it will single sign you on into the Smarter SMSF website. So you can see there, you've now connected, and then under the documents there at the top, and go down, and then you can create new. So you have the ability to, therefore, once you've logged in, you can then go in and look for those documents. So geez, if you just type maybe pension in the navigation on the right-hand side there, you'll then see the pension commencement that we spoke about before. If we go down, pension disappeared. Yep, and then you'll see there we've got, maybe just type pension.
That's my fault.
Yeah. It should change anyway. Yeah, so there you go. So you can see we've now got that version 2.0 there, including starting with an unknown balance. And then we've got all the description and stuff in there to be able to see what we're adding, and sample documents and so forth as well. So that's it.
There was a question, Aaron.
Yep.
Can you, for the documents, you know, I think it might be obvious on screen, but can you pay as you go, or is there a subscription?
No, so you've got the choice. So we do have BGL partner pricing. So if you look at the BGL price there for a pension, it's $132, as opposed to our standard pricing is $198. So there is preferred pricing as a BGL client with this integration. But what I will say is, even though there is a discount on the pricing point there, our subscriptions make it substantially more cost effective than even the PAYG pricing. So if you've got any questions around that sort of stuff, we're happy to run some analysis for you, or help you sort of get underway to understand what sort of documents and how many you might do a year, because a subscription applies across all of the documents on our site. Now, they can vary. You can see a deed upgrade there is different to a pension, is different to a fund establishment, is different to a change of trustee, is different to contribution reserving minutes, et cetera, et cetera. So it is in essence, a flat price. So subject to the number of documents you do, a subscription may be more suited to you than pay as you go, but you have the ability, as you can see there, with the PAYG prices on the website too.
Hey, thank you, Aaron. So,
all right,
as mentioned there at the start, we're happy now to answer any questions that you do have. So please enter them into the Q&A panel, and Aaron and myself will be happy to answer those questions. So there's a question that asked, is there a cost to using the rental statement feature that we showed within Simple Fund 360, or the bank statement upload? There's no additional cost for using the Smart Docs features, so don't get confused with the Smarter SMSF features, the smart docs features. So they can be utilized as part of your subscription, regardless of what you may have.
There's a good question here, Jeeves, actually. So
Yep.
Leona's asked, what is your recommendation with regards to TBC reporting when balance is not known when we have to report quarterly? So yeah, fantastic question, because from the 1st of July, 2023, we have all of our SMSFs. So regardless of whether they are currently an annual payer or a quarterly reporter, quarterly or annual reporter for transfer balance account purposes, they will need to move to quarterly reporting. So the question here is, well, what happens if we don't finish the financial statements until, say, November, where our due date was the 28th of October? So there's really two responses. So one is, if you're trying to utilize actual information in respect to your client and therefore trying to complete the accounts within Simple Fund 360, if you cannot complete it by the 28th of October, you are therefore going to either need to, A, not use that date, as in 1 July, and use a potential 1st of October date, and therefore you would have until the 28th, and you'd need to keep things moving. Or the other thing, which the ATO does make very clear, is you can use a best estimate, and that best estimate, as long as you are using supported data, so you're using information that can help determine the balance of the fund. You don't need the financial statements. If you can determine what the actual market value of assets will be, and it's supported by the appropriate evidence, then that would also be an accepted form for the reporting of that information to the ATO. So if there is a material difference between that for whatever reason, yes, you could cancel that and resubmit it. But that would be the only other way that you would be able to get it done within the prescribed timeframe. If you are out by $500, $1,000, whatever, and that is immaterial, the ATO makes very clear you don't need to go back and re-report. You can use that best estimate for the purposes of transfer balance account reporting. Okay, so you are not absolutely wedded to the number that comes out of Simple Fund from the closure of the accounts. The only time where you must use the actual opening and actual closing balances is for eCPI purposes. So, and the challenge, the other risk, I guess, is whilst historically over the past few years we've been able to report some time thereafter and not be subject to any penalties, the ATO at some point is going to put failure to lodge penalties into this program as well. So there will be a potential risk around that in the future. So it is becoming a much more live issue around timing of pensions from the 1st of July 2023.
There was two questions, Aaron, which I'll sort of combine into one, and maybe we can both touch on it. And it was probably, say, the difference between pension documentation within BGL and probably the investment strategy. So I guess from the BGL perspective, the apart from the advantages you showed before with the pension docs, the documents within Simple Fund 360 are quite generic. They don't cater towards the fund situation, and they don't cater towards the trust deed of the fund. Aaron, you want to add some additional things there?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. I mean, there are elements of the documentation that BGL provides that don't need to be wedded to the governing rules. So one of the things, Jeeves, you may remember at some point, BGL used to have binding death benefit nomination forms and stuff on there. They no longer are really around because the courts have made it very clear that the way in which a binding nomination will be valid is based upon what the trust deed says. So in the future, I can guarantee you there will be a case that will come up that will question the validity of a reversionary pension, right? So then it's going to come down to things like, well, what did your pension document say? Did it follow the rules of the fund and so forth? So in my view, it is really important to ensure that you have linkage to the way in which the pension documents match the governing rules of the fund. there are examples where you may be producing documents out of BGL, but your deed may require you to create an agreement or a contract. So, is the form there from Simple Fund 360 matching what the actual deed requires? So it's not to say that you can't use them, but just in my view, I think you should just be comfortable and ensuring that you've ticked off that they would be sufficient in that case, and manage the risk around that for your client, but then for your own practice as well, which is why, in essence, we got into this partnership in the first instance, because there are a number of these areas that may pose risks in the future. So BGL wanted to partner with someone that would enable more bespoke and customized documents to be able to support these ongoing and ever-growing issues in the industry.
Yep, spot on. And Hamish has asked a question there. Can you map out the process for a recontribution of 330K from funds in the accumulation fund?
Yeah, so in essence, we would just need to undertake a lump sum coming out of Simple Fund 360. So you need to make sure that the benefit payment is coming out of the member, physically paid to the individual themselves. And then you're, in essence, was processing that contribution back into the fund again. So what you want to ensure is that you've got that paper trail of evidence, and that is not only in the bank statement, so you've got the debit and the credit that is on the bank statement, but you can support the fact that there is a lump sum, because that lump sum might come out of a commutation of a pension. So therefore it is a partial commutation, and then you want the contribution coming back in, and naturally that it's been accepted by the fund. So there are a couple of important steps there, but it would require two separate entries in Simple Fund 360 in the first instance.
And I suppose the last two comments there probably related that their auditors aren't happy with the generic investment strategy template out of Simple Fund 360. Again, Aaron, do you want to explain the differences probably to the investment strategy via Smart SMSF?
Yep. Yeah. So we've built a purpose-built investment strategy, and it's a template. It's very deliberate in a template. We know that the large majority of people are unlicensed in this space. So therefore, there is a limitation on what you are allowed to and not allowed to provide. So that in the last 3 or 4 years, probably 3 years, it's been the biggest document production on our website. So both through BGL and through our own Smarter SMSF platform, because of the fact that investment strategies need to appropriately consider all of the different requirements. So there are things in our investment strategy where we are not only looking at objectives, risk, liquidity, diversification, ability to discharge assets, and so on and so forth, but what we have also incorporated into it is things like asset concentration. So what happens if we have heavy asset concentration? We can generate additional trustee minutes around where we have heavy asset concentration in listed shares, in property, I think we might even have cryptocurrency. We've built an investment strategy review statement that links itself to the original investment strategy. So again, it's the specialization and understanding of those requirements. I did a lot of time with the ATO originally when they drafted a lot of this back in 2019. So our investment strategy has gone through the ringer and is pretty robust. So if you do have a question around that, the sample document is available. You could share that with the auditor. The auditor could provide some feedback whether they're happy. We haven't sort of been knocked back on one of those ever. So I feel pretty comfortable that the idea behind the investment strategy template that we've created helps the trustee understand why it's important, but then ensures that all of the elements of SysReg 409 are satisfied as well.
And the last question before we wrap up is, can unlicensed accountants use the new pension documents?
Again, it's a byproduct of whether the instruction or how the instruction has been developed. So naturally, any recommendation to be able to commence a pension actually sits with that individual that is licensed. So it's no different. So the pension documents that we now have here, yes, they are enhanced, but the reality is the framework in which and how you can provide advice hasn't changed. We'd like to see it changing through the quality of advice review, but the process doesn't change insofar that any recommendation to start a pension would require someone to be licensed. Otherwise, you would be doing it under some form of execution only, in which the client has undertaken an opportunity to seek advice, and then whether they've either accepted or declined that advice, you would then go through that next phase from there.
Okay, so that's all the questions for today. So Aaron, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure, mate. All good.
So, and as mentioned to all attendees there at the start, everyone will receive a link to a copy of the recording, and you will also receive a copy of the slides from today. So any questions you do have, feel free to follow up with Aaron and myself separately. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions. Yep. Okay, thanks everyone, and see you next time.
Thank you. Ta.